I've spent every summer of my adult life working at Oakwood Library, a sprawling Victorian building nestled between ancient oaks in our small coastal town. The rhythm of shelving books, helping patrons, and breathing in the comforting scent of aging paper has become as natural to me as the tide's ebb and flow. That's why I volunteered to catalog the newly discovered collection in the basement archives, a task that would keep me working late into the evening hours. The basement of Oakwood has always been cooler than the rest of the building, with narrow windows that let in thin rectangles of light during the day. But as dusk settled, those windows turned to black mirrors, reflecting only the yellow glow of the old pendant lamps hanging from the ceiling beams. "Just finished Section D tonight, Eliza," Mrs. Harmon had said before leaving. "The rest can wait until tomorrow." "Of course, Mrs. Harmon," I replied, gathering my supplies. "I'll make sure to lock up when I'm done." She paused at the basement door. "And don't forget to turn off all the lights before you go." "I won't forget, Mrs. Harmon," I assured her. As she headed upstairs, she called back, "Oh, and if you need anything, my number is on the desk." "Thank you, Mrs. Harmon," I called after her, already turning my attention to the boxes of ancient texts. I nodded to myself, grateful for the solitude. There's a particular peace in being alone in a library after hours, a sacred quiet that feels different from the hushed atmosphere of the day. The building settles into itself, creaking and sighing as though finally relaxing after hours of holding its breath. The collection I was cataloging had been discovered during renovations, a sealed room containing books and artifacts from the town's founding in the 1700s. Many were journals from the original settlers, their pages brittle, and their bindings cracked with age. I handled each with reverence, photographing, measuring, and recording details in the database. It was nearly 9 when I first noticed something odd. A book I had already cataloged and placed on the completed cart somehow appeared back in the box I was currently working through. I frowned, checking my notes. Yes, I had definitely processed this one, a leather-bound journal with a distinctive water stain on its cover. "Getting sloppy," I murmured to myself, returning it to the cart. 20 minutes later, it happened again with a different book, then again with the first one. The third time, I stood up straight, my spine tingling with an inexplicable chill. The basement suddenly felt colder, the shadows between the shelves deeper. I glanced at the small analog clock on the wall, 9:47 p.m. A soft thud from somewhere in the stacks made me jump. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding thin in the vast space. "Is someone there?" No answer came, but I could have sworn I heard the whisper of pages turning. I told myself it was just the old building settling, or perhaps a draft disturbing loose papers. Libraries make noises. This was a fact I'd known for years. Yet something felt different tonight. A pressure in the air, like the heaviness before a storm. Returning to my work, I noticed my hands were trembling slightly. The journal I held was open to an entry dated October 17th, 1753. The handwriting was elegant but hurried, the ink blotched in places as though the writer had been agitated. "We have disturbed something in the clearing," it read. "The men uncovered a stone circle while preparing the foundation for the town hall. Elder stones, Captain Whitmore says, predating even the natives. Markings unlike any I've seen. The air around them shimmers like heat above a flame, though the ground is cold to touch. Jenkins swears he saw a figure standing among the trees last night, watching our camp. A woman, he says, though none reside here yet." Her smile troubled him greatly. The lights flickered off suddenly, plunging that corner of the room into darkness, with a cool draft seemingly adding a layer of chill. I gasped, nearly dropping the journal. The darkness seemed to pulse, as though breathing. "Just the wind," I whispered, though the basement windows were sealed shut. I fumbled for my phone, switching on its flashlight, and as I moved, the beam caught something that made my heart stutter. A handprint on one of the windows, as though someone had pressed their palm against the glass from outside. But that was impossible. The basement windows were at least 8 feet above ground level. As I stared, the handprint slowly faded, condensation evaporating, and the lights came back on again. I should leave, I thought. Call Mrs. Harmon and tell her I wasn't feeling well. But professional pride kept me rooted. I'd never left a job unfinished, and I had only a dozen books left to catalog. Forcing myself to focus, I returned to the table. The journal I had been reading was closed, though I was certain I'd left it open. When I reached for it, I noticed a thin film of frost on its cover, despite the mild June evening. The frost melted beneath my fingertips, leaving them damp and unnaturally cold. I opened the journal again, flipping through until I found where I'd left off. The next entry was dated October 18th, and Jenkins is gone. His bed was empty this morning, his boots still beside it. We searched the woods, but found only his hat beside the stone circle. Captain Whitmore has ordered the stones to be buried again and marked with warnings. Too late, I fear. She has been invited in. The word invited was underlined 3 times, the pen having torn through the paper. A soft clicking sound drew my attention to the far end of the basement. It was rhythmic, like fingernails tapping on wood. Tap, tap, tap. Pause, tap, tap, tap. This is ridiculous, I said aloud, my voice startlingly loud in the silence that followed. There's nothing here. But even as I spoke, I felt it. The certainty that I was no longer alone. Not the comfortable presence of another person, but something watching from the shadows between the shelves. Something patient and ancient. The tapping started again, closer now. Tap, tap, tap. I stood, knocking my chair backward. Who's there? Silence answered, but the quality of it had changed. It was the silence of something listening. I began gathering my things, no longer caring about finishing the cataloging. As I reached for my bag, my elbow knocked against the stack of completed books, sending them tumbling to the floor. They fell with a series of thuds that seemed impossibly loud, echoing through the basement. When the echoes faded, I heard something else, a soft, melodic humming. A woman's voice, singing a tune I almost recognized but couldn't place. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I dropped to my knees, frantically gathering the fallen books. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip them. As I reached for the last one, the journal with the water stain, I saw it was open to a page I hadn't read before. A loose piece of paper had been inserted, yellowed with age, but the ink still vibrant. It wasn't handwritten, but printed in what looked like an old typeface. To call her forth, speak her name thrice while touching wood that has known fire. She comes with the scent of salt and iron, wearing the face that pleases you most. Do not trust this face. Do not accept what she offers. Above all, do not invite her to follow. The humming stopped abruptly. In the silence that followed, I became aware of a new sound, breathing that wasn't my own, coming from just behind me. I whirled around, but there was no one there, just shelves and shadows. The lights flickered, and in that momentary darkness, I felt something brush against my cheek, a touch so cold it burned. When the lights stabilized, I saw her. She stood between 2 tall shelves, partially obscured by shadow. A woman in a dress that seemed to shift between styles. One moment, a beautiful dress, the next something older, made of rougher material. Her face was beautiful in a way that made my eyes hurt to look at it. Her features too perfect, too symmetrical. "Hello, dear," she said, her voice like honey poured over broken glass. "You called me." "I didn't," I whispered, backing away. "I didn't call anyone." Her smile widened impossibly. "You spoke my name 3 times while touching the journal. Wood that has known fire. The leather was tanned over oak flames." I frantically tried to remember if I had spoken any name aloud. Had I read something from the journal without realizing? "What's your name?" I asked, my mouth dry. She gestured gracefully, and suddenly the air around us shimmered. The basement dissolved like smoke, replaced by a vision of flames. I saw this very room, but centuries ago. Wooden beams blazing, books turning to ash, and through the inferno, a woman's silhouette standing untouched in the center of the conflagration. The vision lasted only seconds before snapping back to the present, but the smell of smoke lingered. The realization hit me like ice water. The basement, the wooden shelves, the old beams overhead, all of it had been rebuilt after a fire. Wood that has known fire, and her name, Mrs. Harmon. I had said it 3 times while handling the leather-bound journal. "You're not," I began, my voice failing. She tilted her head, and suddenly her features began to shift. The beautiful, terrible face melted away, replaced by something familiar. Kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, a cardigan I'd seen countless times. "Of course, Mrs. Harmon," she said in the voice I knew so well. "Don't forget to turn off all the lights before you go." The mimicry was perfect, down to the slight tremor in her aged hands as she straightened imaginary papers. But the smile remained wrong, too wide, too eager. "You're not her," I whispered. "Where is she? What did you do to Mrs. Harmon?" The thing wearing Mrs. Harmon's face laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, my dear Eliza, there never was a Mrs. Harmon. Not for you, anyway." The basement around us began to change, walls stretching impossibly tall, shelves extending into darkness that had no end. The familiar became alien. The safe became sinister. "This is my domain," she continued, her voice shifting between Mrs. Harmon's gentle tones and something ancient and hungry. "Built over my stones, filled with stories of me. And you've been coming here every summer for how long now? 4 years? 5? My knees nearly gave out. That's impossible. I remember her. I remember conversations, training sessions. You remember what I wanted you to remember, she said, stepping closer. What I needed you to remember to bring you here, to this moment. The lonely librarian, so devoted to her work, so hungry for knowledge, so easy to guide. She gestured to the journals scattered around us. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Because you were perfect, she said, and for a moment her voice held genuine warmth. So dedicated, so isolated, so desperate for something meaningful. I watched you, learned your routines, your hopes. You spend every summer here because you have nowhere else to go, don't you? No family that calls, no friends who invite you to gatherings, just you and the books. The truth of it hit harder than her revelation. She was right. The library had been my refuge, not just from the world, but from the emptiness of my life. I can give you purpose, Eliza, she continued, her voice becoming hypnotic. Real purpose. I can show you knowledge that no living person possesses. Histories that predate civilization. Secrets that could reshape how humanity understands itself. She moved closer and I found I couldn't step back. The scent of salt and iron filled my nostrils. But beneath it was something else. The comforting smell of old books, of knowledge waiting to be discovered. You've spent your whole life searching for meaning in other people's stories, she whispered. But I can make you part of the story. The keeper of knowledge. The guardian of secrets. You'll never be lonely again, never be forgotten. What? What would I have to do? The question escaped before I could stop it. Her smile became radiant, terrible in its beauty. You simply invite me into your life, not to your mundane little apartment. That was never your real home anyway. Invite me to follow you into a new existence, a new purpose. I thought of my empty apartment, of the silence that greeted me each evening, of the summers I'd spent here, because I had nothing else, nowhere else to belong. You're offering me a life? I asked. I'm offering you immortality, she corrected. A chance to be part of something eternal, to help me gather others like you, the isolated, the knowledge-hungry, the forgotten. Together we could build a library that spans centuries, a repository of human experience that would make the greatest collections pale in comparison. The offer hung in the air between us, shimmering with possibility. I could see it in my mind, endless halls of books, mysteries unlocked, purposes fulfilled. Never again the ache of isolation, never again the weight of meaninglessness. One small invitation. Hun, she insisted. The words felt right on my tongue, necessary. I opened my mouth to speak them, to finally belong somewhere. What harm could there be in one small invitation? As the words left my lips, a laughter echoed through the impossible library.